My name's Tom Place, this is Chasing Cars, and with me today is the new generation Subaru Forester. Now, after 8 years on sale, the 5th generation Forester is slowly being run out of town, and in its place is this, the new 6th generation. And it is a bit more evolution than revolution in a lot of respects, but there are some big changes. One of them is to do with this badge right here, the hybrid system. They're calling it a strong hybrid system, and for good reason. It looks to be significantly more powerful and also more efficient than its predecessor. Now, it's that efficiency that Subaru says is going to enable the new Forester hybrid to do over 1,000 kilometers on a single tank, and that's in combined conditions. We're going to go all into the new drivetrain today, and we're also going to have a look at the design, talk about the interior, and also tell you what to expect next. But before we jump into it, please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below if you want to see more content like this.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
Now, as many of you may know, the new generation Subaru Forester is already on sale in the USA. And while this one isn't quite showroom ready, this is a very similar interpretation of what we're going to see in Aussie showrooms. This one specifically is the new sport grade, and it's in hybrid trim, which we'll touch on in just a moment. But I just wanted to have a look at the outer exterior here. It's a bit more butch than what we've come to expect from the Forester. I quite liked how approachable and a bit more rounded and a bit more soft the way its predecessor was. And it's a bit more butch in its approach, probably echoing the likes of the RAV4, which has been very successful with that design style in recent years. I'd say that's got a lot to do with things like the American market influence here. They have a bit more of a butcher body style generally, and the Forester's been a big success story over there. The bonnet here comes out and it's got more of a square edge to it as it flows down. But although it might look a lot bigger when you look at these images, I think once you actually see it in person, you realize it's still actually quite a compact car. It just looks a little bit bigger than it did previously. It's only a little bit longer in terms of length. The wheelbase is exactly the same. It's altogether a fairly similar size car. Looking around at other parts of the Forester as well, you'll notice a few interesting details. One is the dark bronze accents we've got around the car. That's unique to the hybrid version of the sport grade, and I think it makes it stand out more than all the other grades. It's quite a nice little touch, actually. You'll also note that we have that same color on these wheels here, which are 19-inch wheels, which is 1 inch larger than what was available on its predecessor. Personally, I'd rather the 18s, but Subaru tells us they've set up a separate suspension tune for these larger wheels, so that's at least good to see. Now, just quickly touching on the grades available. So for the petrol, we have 4, and for the hybrid, we have 3. But let's crack into this drivetrain. So there are 2-litre hybrids available elsewhere in the world, but here in Australia, we get the 2.5-litre Boxer hybrid system. And notably, it's paired to an 88-kilowatt electric motor. That's significantly more powerful than the 12-kilowatt electric motor that we had previously. So they really do mean it when they say strong hybrid. Now, although this is a Toyota-sourced electric motor and also battery, the layout is more similar to something like a Ford Ranger plug-in hybrid than it is something like a Toyota RAV4. And that's because Subaru really wants to preserve the all-wheel drive off-road capability that it's become known for over the years. And they've done that by tweaking the layout to be a little bit more utilitarian. So in the RAV4, for example, we just have a simple electric motor at the rear, and there's no traditional drive shaft connecting the front motor to the rear electric motor. So in the Subaru here, we've got the traditional 2.5-litre engine, we've then got the 88-kilowatt electric motor, and then we've got the transmission and the all-wheel drive system. And that means there is always power being sent to all 4 wheels because they really do want to preserve that extra off-road capability, as I said. Now, will that have a bit of an impact on fuel efficiency? We don't really know just yet. In fact, they haven't actually released the official fuel consumption claim, but we can read between the lines a little bit here. Now, there is going to be a 63-litre fuel tank in the new Forester hybrid and also the petrol variant, significantly larger tank than the previous hybrid, by the way. And if we take into consideration the fact this has got 1,000 kilometers or more on a single tank in combined conditions, that means that we should be looking at something around the 6-litre per 100-kilometer mark, which is actually really quite impressive. But we'll have to wait and see what the official number is, and also wait and see what it actually gets in the real world, but that will come in due time. Jumping into the interior of the new Forester now, and there's a notably different approach to the way the 6th generation goes about its interior to the way the 5th generation went about its interior. I was in the 5th generation the other day, and I loved the knobs and the switches and its uniqueness, the way that it goes about it, but it is starting to look a little bit old. Things like its strange little third screen that was up in the top of the dash and things like that, that wasn't really the best in terms of usability. And so So Subaru is trying to go with a bit more of a modern style and make it a bit more minimalist in its function. We don't really know how it works in the real world just yet, but having a brief look at it just now, it does look quite nice. It's easy on the eyes, you're not thinking about where everything is. You do have this 11.6-inch portrait touchscreen here, similar to what we've seen on the Crosstrek and the Outback in recent years. Wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. Finally, we don't have to worry about a cable anymore. And we also have a wireless charging pad down here, which is very nice indeed. Something unique to the hybrid grades is this 12-inch digital driver's display here, which is the first for the Forester, and it looks really nice and bright, really nice and colorful. It's got some nice little mountains in the background and things like that. So it really does lift the overall experience of it, and it's something we haven't really seen on a Forester previously. It's good to see as well that while we have moved to a touchscreen interface for the most part, there are still some physical buttons, for example, like our up and down on the temperature control here, though you do have to go into the touchscreen to control things like fan speed, so that's something to keep in mind. But at the same time, the touch targets do seem to be nice and big, and I know when I had my long-term Subaru Outback, I found that I got quite used to it over time. It's not too much of an impediment, unlike other climate controls that are sandwiched in the touchscreen to very poor effect. So well done, Subaru, on that front. Also note that we've still got things like a traditional shifter here. We've also got paddle shifters on the steering wheel as well, so it's great to have both of those combinations. So the Subaru still keeps that utilitarian feel of the Forester that a lot of its fans really do love. In terms of features, it's good to see, for example, that Subaru has equipped the base model with things like heated seats as standard, and right at the top of the tree we also see that they've finally added ventilated seats for the front occupants. We do miss out on some things, for example, like you can get in the Subaru Outback, things like a heated steering wheel, things like heated seats for the rear, but that really isn't the end of the world, and we do expect that the new generation Forester is going to be cheaper than its equivalent Outback. So something to think about there. Possibly they could have gone a little bit further, but I think covering the bases and adding things like ventilated seats in Australia, oh, that's been a long time coming. Very happy to see it. Finally, I'll just touch on safety before we jump into the back seat. Subaru is naturally gunning for a 5-star ANCAP rating, and to do that, they've equipped some pretty decent standard features. Things like a 360-degree camera as standard, very nice to see, 9 airbags, and the car also has the ability to bring itself to a complete stop if the driver suddenly becomes unconscious. So great things to see there. Jumping into the backseat of the Forester, this has always been a great point for this model, and it really continues with the new generation. I'm 6 foot tall, sitting behind my driving position. I've got stacks of room for my knees, heaps of room to move my feet around, and the visibility is something that's always been good about the Forester, but they've actually improved it again. And they've done that by doing a few things. One is by making the back window just a little bit wider, and they've also made the front headrest just a little bit more narrow so that people can see around them more easily. So the end result is you pretty much feel like you're sitting in the front seat of the car here, which is a really commendable effort from Subaru. Now, in terms of comfort, I will say it's pretty comfortable back here, though the seats do feel a little bit hard. Be interesting to see if that changes at all when the production model finally comes to Australia, but for the most part, yeah, look, it's okay, but I think it could be a little bit better. Certainly not quite as soft as the front seats. In terms of amenities, we don't have a heat back here. As I said before, we don't have rear heated seats, which is interesting considering that there's blanks for them down here, but we do have things like USB-C, USB-A, and also rear air vents, which is always lovely to see to help ward off that car sickness that kids often get. Materials, look, they're a little bit hard and scratchy back here, but certainly not the end of the world. And there's some nice little fabric materials around this cabin. So this is the sport grade, so it's a little bit more utilitarian. And of course, the seat material here, being the sport, is designed to be water repellent for those adventure seekers. You can go for some cloth on the lower grades, or you can go for some leather on the higher grades like the touring. So it's good to see that flexibility there. Personally, I quite like the leather on the touring grades, but this is certainly a nice compromise for those adventure seekers. Coming around to the boot area of the Forester, this has always been a big strength for this model, and there's no reason that that shouldn't also be the case with the new gen. So power tailgate in this one, you also do have the option to use the kick sensor, but I'll be damned if I can ever get that to work on camera. But anyway, let's look at the luggage space. So it's been around about 500 litres in previous generations. It's said to be around about the same in this one, though when you fold the seats flat, they say there is actually a little bit more room than there was in the predecessor. So that's certainly very good to see. Now, this is the hybrid variant, and that means that there's one thing that's very different about this when you compare it to the petrol. Once again, that is the fact that we don't have a spare tyre. Now, the petrol has a full-size spare. This doesn't even have a space-saver spare, which is really disappointing. Now, I did have a bit of a chat about this with Subaru, and they do understand that a lot of Subaru buyers really like having their full-size spare. So they said that that's going to be sort of offered as an accessory of some kind. Maybe it's something you put on the tow bar, etc., etc. But nevertheless, it's not here in stock form. Looking around this boot area, you'll also note that there's a few extra little goodies than there were previously. More shopping bag hooks, and we also have the ability to lower down the back seats with a nice little switch here. Unfortunately, there's nowhere to stow this blind on the hybrid model, something you have been able to do on most Subarus. So that's been our first look at the Subaru Forester today. Now, we've only had a little bit of time with this new generation, but what I have seen, I have indeed liked. I like things like the new generation hybrid system, the fact that it's a lot stronger than its predecessor, which really wasn't that hard because it was such a weak system in the old model, but we are seeing some encouraging signs, and being able to do things like 1,000 kilometers on a tank in combined conditions certainly sounds very good to me. And they've managed to still preserve a lot of the stuff that still makes the Forester great. So all very good signs from there. Now, this officially goes on sale midway through this year, so we'll finally get to take it on the roads then and see what it's actually like to drive. But for now, I want to hear what you guys have to say about this model. Have Subaru gone far enough with this new generation, or could they have done a little bit more? Let me know in the comments section down below. But for now, that's all. Thank you for watching Chasing Cars.